Okay, what I'm going to do here is go through some natural theology versus special revelation. Special revelation is where people believe that God specially revealed things to them, and that's where we get books like the Bible or the Quran or the Book of Mormon and stuff like that. And what we're going to focus on here is natural theology, where we can use arguments from the natural world to try to prove God's existence. And what we do is we try to build an argument with premises that are true and a conclusion that would logically follow those premises. And sometimes they're not with 100% certainty. That would be too high of a standard, and we basically have to be skeptical about everything in life because we don't hold anything to that level, really. What we want to do is just show what would be more true than false, or what's more plausible than its negation. Even if it's 51 to 49%, you want to go with what is most plausible, which would be the 51%. And we're going to cover evidence for and against. And what we want to do is even live our lives by what would be the most plausible. It's the most rational way to live our lives. Going with the least plausible would be irrational. Notice this isn't a special pleading for God, how you should live your life and apply it in all matters. Really is the most practical. What you want to do is live your life based on reason. You can't set a standard so high that there's no reason for doing anything. That's why we don't go with only what would be 100% true. Okay, here I'm going to start with the Kalam cosmological argument. It goes like this. Premise 1 is everything that begins to exist has a cause. Premise 2 is the universe began to exist. So the conclusion that logically follows is that the universe has a cause. Now to deny the conclusion, all you really have to do is deny one premise. So we get to the question of what's more plausibly true than false. In this video, I'm just going to go over premise 1, and the next video I'll go off of premise 2. Premise 1 is everything that begins to exist has a cause. Now, anyone that's really seeking truth can't deny this one. Saying something came into being with no cause is the same as saying it came from nothing. And that's impossible. Things don't come from nothing. Nothing doesn't have any properties. So how can something with no properties produce something with properties? That doesn't make any sense. And really, it's worse than magic. At least religion has explanatory power, the most explanatory power, and there's a God that did it. Some people might say that during some of my arguments or debates with atheists, they claim that vertical particles come from nothing. And that's not true. It's really what it is energy fluctuations in a vacuum. And in physics, a vacuum is not nothing. The vacuum is actually physical in nature, governed by physical laws. So saying that would be false. Quantum mechanics is not going to save the atheist here. In quantum mechanics, virtual particles come into being in a vacuum. The vacuum is sparked by a scientist. The particles exist for a period of time inversely proportional to their mass. But in the case of the Big Bang, there is no vacuum, there's nothing. There's no scientist, there's nothing. The universe is far too massive to last 14 billion years as a particle, because particles come into existence and disappear within a nanosecond. The quantum gravity model makes use of imaginary time, which cannot be mapped into physical reality. It's purely theoretical. It's not science. Now, there's some models of the universe that are based on working in a vacuum that wasn't there before it came into being. Basically, they're appealing to quantum mechanics before quantum mechanics was actually established. And that's kind of an illogical way to look at it. And really what they do is they rely on misleading metaphors and inaccuracies. What they're doing is using nothing with an inaccurate definition. A quantum vacuum is not nothing. Definition of is absence of everything which has no properties. It's a greater leap of faith to believe the universe came into being from nothing rather than God. If an atheist appeals to this, then they can't tell a theist that they're irrational. What could be more irrational than believing the universe popped into existence and caused out of nothing? A couple of questions come into mind is why limit it to universes? Why doesn't it still happen? And why can't everything and everything come into being out of nothing? Because like I said, nothing has no properties. One of the arguments against it, premise one would be, that I've heard is, it's true of everything in the universe, but not of the universe. And really what's happening here is it's a taxi cab fallacy. Taxi cab fallacy. You can't dismiss the causal principle because you've arrived at your desired location. Premise one is not only a physical law like gravity, but a metaphysical principle that applies whether or not physical reality exists. It's really arbitrary to say that it doesn't apply to the universe. Atheists will say if everything has a cause, what caused God at this point? And really what we can do is look back at the premise, and that's not what the premise is saying. It's saying that everything that comes into existence has a cause. And we believe that God didn't come into existence, that they're eternal. And that'll be a different argument for a different day. But okay, so far, premise one is a religiously neutral principle, nothing to do with God, just simply based on a casual principle. Can things come into being without a cause, out of nothing? Common experience and scientific evidence confirm premise one, and premise one is always verified and never falsified. It's hard to deny that premise one is more plausibly true than false in light of all the evidence. This is from, all this that I've said today is from notes that I've taken from listening to William Lane Craig, Neil deGrasse Tyson, John Lennox, Lawrence Krauss, and others. I do want to send out a special thanks to Neil Besant from the UK and Sean Brady from the US for helping me learn the physics and metaphysics through discussions, and both of them are non-theists. Thank you guys.